Good morning, good morning, good morning. Yes, it's Alan Cox here on this sunny morning. I was going to say a sunny morning, but just as I start speaking, the clouds come over, but it's very warm. Anyway, I hope everything's all right in your world. And with me is my friend and dear colleague, David Parry. Good morning, David.
Morning, Alan. My old cocker, as they used to say. Yeah, I mean it's an
Yeah,
overcast day here
as I
today.
say, I was going to say, as they say in Dudley and all things around the Midlands, yeah, all right.
Oh, that's
Are you all
better.
right?
That's better. A
From you.
bit more colourful than the other one. Yeah, I
That's
mean
all.
our island is our
That's all.
island. It's wonderful being
That's
here.
old English.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's Old English because Old
Yes,
English was
yes,
nearly pure
indeed.
German, but it's certainly dialect English, and we need more of it.
Yeah, yeah, indeed, indeed. Oh dear. Well, as we were saying just before we went on air, um, there's certainly something strange things afoot at the moment in the world. And I'm not just talking about um, the wars, because there's more than one going on. I mean, that's terrible, obviously, and something really to be concerned about. But I think on the paranormal spiritual side, it, the world seems to be, I don't know, but very kind of disconnected at the moment, David. I don't know whether you'd see that.
Um, All right. My favourite option, by the way, is the way the Saint and Greavesy of the paranormal world. Don't forget that, because I think that one works well.
Right.
Um, I'm always in two minds about what my relationship is with the paranormal world. Anyway, um, I mean, yes, it's
And
an
me to be
interest
truthful.
of mine. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, unlike yourself, I mean, you've got a very clear position in it all. But it's an interest of mine. But does that mean that I'm part of it all? I don't know. I mean, I get invited on shows, but like this one by your good self.
No?
But does that mean I'm part of it all? I don't know. The paranormal world strikes me as not really a world, but more like warring factions trying to get a career on TV, and going
Yeah.
about it completely the wrong way.
Yes.
I'm not saying there aren't any good paranormal investigators. There are some exceptional ones. Um, I'm thinking of that young scholar, that young scallywag that's caught my attention at the moment, Dr. Cal Cooper. He's on my Facebook friend list, and he's written a book about phone calls from the dead. Now that is
Right.
interesting. I mean, he's a psychologist. He says he's a skeptic. In other words, he adopts a thoughtful approach to it all, right? And my God, what is wrong with that? That's necessary. But he's I don't know he's caught my attention, and that subject has caught my attention, and I think people leave him be, as it were. I'm into colloquialisms now. You've started something now. They leave him
Right.
be because he's a psychologist. So my God, is that what things have been reduced to? That sort of if you've got a bit of status somewhere, a bit of standing somewhere, they lay off. But if you don't, then they just attack.
Right.
My God. No, I mean I mean it's a genuinely fascinating subject. I mean, there's going to be something missing in you if you don't find it interesting, because how far does life extend? How far does your own life extend? What does all this weird stuff mean? But no, I don't
Well,
find a paranormal world as such, Alan. What do you think?
well, there's a program that was on TV, a series. I think it was before Christmas. And yes, last night, Anne and I got round to watching. It's 4 episodes. Got to watching it. It's been advertised a lot on ITV. It's on ITVX, and it's called Platform Seven. And I don't know if you've seen it, David, but it was absolutely gripping and fascinating. and it's a the story basically is about on this railway station on platform 7. This young woman supposedly commits suicide in trying to come into the station, and then there's a guy there who committed suicide as well, and I was stuck on the station, and she really couldn't understand why. She couldn't remember everything, but she thought she got everything going for her in life. And anyway, on the 12th, on the year anniversary of her death, a railway policeman still wasn't satisfied with the verdict, and he pursues it. And when it comes down to it, the guy who came into her life wasn't what he seemed to be, and it was brilliant the way they did it. Anyway, um, she finds out, she realizes, and she decides it's time to get her revenge on what he's done to her. And the last episode is absolutely brilliant because it's like poltergeist stuff. She's there, but nobody else can see her, and she goes into their flat, and she starts turning the TV on, moving things, breaking things, and in the end, right, he runs outside, and she's standing there guarding, tormenting him, and and the woman's looking through the window at him, and of course you can only see him, and he's acting like a total Fruit Loop, shouting, "Get away from me!" and all this. And in the end, he ends up in a mental institution, and that's when it ends. But the build up to it is absolutely incredible. It's worth watching, David. Yeah, it starts off very slow, but I tell you, I looked at it and I thought, yeah, I could actually. All right, the people who write it, perhaps they think it's far fetched, but I don't actually. I think it could possibly happen. So the paranormal, I think, can come into our world, David. But yeah, Platform 7 on ITVX, it's 4 1 hour programs, basically. It's worth watching, my opinion,
Well,
anyway.
what caught my attention
So,
there was you using the phrase Fruit Loop. Is that British? Or is that some horrible Americanism? I think that's some horrible Americanism. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, I've not seen it. It's good to hear it's a good production, but I wouldn't,
yeah.
personally get too carried away by a group of cynical old hacks penning a script and thinking what pushes buttons. That said, I used to love the early X Files, and I know you've had dealings with people in the X Files, and the early series, not when it just became some sort of apology for UFOs. Same old, same old. Oh God, again. In the first couple of series, the first series, it was phenomenology. Therefore, you had UFOs, you had aliens, you had ghosts, you had unusual phenomena of all sorts, and that really brought it to life for me because the original idea I thought was much more exciting and actually did mirror a truth that the FBI, not entirely a good organization, like the CIA, not entirely a good organization. They were perfectly aware that all this stuff was going on and didn't know what to make about it, make of it, but couldn't quite ignore it, and so kept files on it. There was an unknown office or a little known office whereby these cases, when it impinged on our world and on crimes and on felonies, that was when the investigation, excuse me, would happen. I thought that was a very smart, credible, and quite fascinating idea. And I was told a couple of years later, at least for a while, there was something like that. Particularly under J. Edgar Hoover's, what a terrible man, under J. Edgar Hoover's watch, because he wanted to keep He wanted an eye on everything. He wanted a finger in everything and every pie. So yeah, I mean, it's good to stimulate the imagination, but I think we've got to be careful of saying these things are educational. I mean, they're not.
No, I
It's
know that.
good that it's because there's too much of that nonsense in the world at the moment. This post-truth nonsense. Right, tell that to the car that's just about to run you over. Yeah, and I think it takes away from the
That's
importance of
right.
real paranormal. I think it takes away from the real importance of actual paranormal investigation. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, you're on about the X Files. Well, Chris Carter, the creator of it. I mean, I know Chris. I interviewed him. He gave me a 2 hour interview. Must be about 10 years ago now. On Thanksgiving's Day, he gave up 2 hours of his holiday for me to interview him. And of course, he was a good friend of Manny Fox, my dear departed friend, and a fascinating man, really is. And how the X Files came about, and because he used to be a surfer, and he used to work for a surfing magazine publication, and from there he went over to the paranormal. I just found it quite fascinating. What a lovely man. I like Chris, nice guy. But he's always had like an interest in the kind of what can you call it? The undercover things that goes on in government and things like that. But what it was, his wife, um, her father, I think it was connected in that way, and that's how it happened. But yeah, it, a lot of these things. I'm not saying about platform service educational, but I'm saying it makes you think. And of course, the German word poltergeist, a ghost moving things came into my mind as I was watching. I thought, and it just made me laugh. It did, and I thought, yeah, I could just imagine that happening to somebody.
Yeah, as I
Things in
say,
front of them moving, because actually, well, Anne and I have seen it in our own house. We've seen it in a good way. We had a friend who sadly passed away, and we got a photograph of Sai Baba. And on the morning of his funeral, an Asian lady found him with helped, and she didn't know anything about Robert, her friend, or anything. And she phoned up and she said, I've had a visitation from somebody named Robert, and he says it's his funeral today, and he wants you to be happy. Anyway, I put down the phone, and literally a minute later, this picture of Sai Baba flew off the mantelpiece onto the floor, face up, and it was like a sign from. I don't see it as far fetched, because Anne and I actually witnessed it in our house. So, which some
yeah,
people might find hard to believe. I accept
well,
that.
no, I think we're talking about two separate things here. I mean, certainly there are anomalous phenomena. I mean, that's the phrase universities like at the minute, by which they mean psychic activity. And nobody doubts anomalous phenomena happen. Um, no, nobody. I don't think serious investigators find these things far fetched. The argument is, what are they and what causes them? But to say, I think we've got to be very careful. To say that a work of fiction suddenly opens people up. I mean, it may do, but suddenly opens people up to other types of possibility. We just got to be careful. I mean, we were watching Hellboy last night, the recent movie. So is that meant to open people up to possibilities? I mean, it's one of the most appalling movies I've ever seen in my life. And it's
I've never seen
clearly
it.
Oh well, I mean, I took an interest in that years back because it was comic. I'm actually not against pop culture. I know everybody thinks I am. I just don't like it usurping its position and saying it's something more when it's not. It was a comic, and it was quite amusing. But I mean, how far does this go? I mean, is Mickey Mouse an anomalous phenomenon? No, 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 no. Will Mickey Mouse open up psychic possibilities? No, 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 no. We've got to be a little more clear-minded in these things, because I think the dark forces are trying to blur the boundaries. So most people end up thinking, oh, that's just fantasy then. So I think we've got to be a bit more careful, because I see, if we are talking about anomalous phenomena and negative energies, actually the beginning of something quite sinister going on. And we've got to be a bit more careful as to who and what and where and how and why. What do you think, Alan?
Well, yes, I agree. I do agree. But, the people, some of the people who come up with these ideas, um, I do wonder what kind of spiritual or psychic connection they've got. The one that always comes to mind is the Matrix series. My friend Pamela Lee Richard, the former Pamela Ike, um, she has this deep-seated belief that we're all living in a hologram. And if you think about it, that's what the Matrix is on about. Is like we're all controlled and living in some kind of a hologram, where our lives are controlled. Now, to what degree do you go along with that? I suppose you could argue that we're all controlled in one form or another. I mean, our wonderful British government tell us that we're all free. Uh, are we? Well, we're free to a point as long as we pay our taxes and pay everything and do what they tell us to do. Is that freedom? I don't know. Is that created by some kind of hologram? I don't know. What do you think of that one, David?
Excuse me. Again, I think we've got to be very careful. So who made the hologram and what are they up to? And also, if we're all under control, don't ever think you can do anything because you're under control. Don't do shows like this. Don't go to a hospital. You're under control. It's all predetermined. I think we've got to be very, 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 very careful that that isn't something the powers that be want us to think. You can't do anything. It's all under control. We've got you under control. Because people, again, don't really follow the thought through. What does it mean? It means you can't do anything. It
Mm.
means you are a victim all your life, all the time. You can't do anything. Well, that's not what the great religions have said, and it's they're not superfluous. I don't know. I'm sort of against this side of the New Age movement. Oh, that's just what they said back then. Oh, is it wrong then? I mean, we've got to be very, very careful.
Yeah.
There's no point saying you've got an opinion. There's no point talking about freedom. There's no point thinking there's a better tomorrow, because if we're all under control, there isn't. And that's the end of it. There is no middle ground. That's the end of it. What interests me, excuse me, is the origin of thoughts like that. Certainly, the first Matrix I thought was crisp, original, well acted. I thought the storyline was very, very good, and it was clearly
Yeah.
based on much more ancient ideas. That this is a world of samsara. This is a world of illusion. Now that's a very, very, very different thought from the one that's just been outlined.
Yes.
Because, of course, there is a way of escaping that, and there is a way of doing better, which, of course, the principal character does do. He escapes the dream, he escapes the control. I mean, I'm, as I say, I'm just wary of the crossover, not because I don't think it shouldn't be done. It should be done. Art is art, and art is everything. but I'm very wary of lazy people thinking it's something it's not, and who is encouraging that sort of thing, and why. What do you think, Alan?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, um, some people even question about uh, did Jesus exist? Um, are the Old and New Testaments just made up? Is it all a big con? I don't really see how people can actually think that or believe that, because there's more things in heaven than there is on earth. I mean, the thing I tell you what always amazes me, looking on the bad side of it, you get the awful people who do terrible things, and not many get away with it in this life, and if they do, then they've got to answer in the next life. But even if I've noticed, even if it's 20, 30, or 40 years later, something happens and the person gets brought to justice for what they've done. Now, I don't believe that that is just fluke by chance. I believe that happens for a reason. I believe that the um, um, God, Jesus, the universal energy, whatever you want to call that, as a way of putting a justice there. Um, we're given the freedom to do what we want. Then it's up to us to have the responsibility to do the right thing. Um, I don't believe any of us get away with anything in the end, but there's a lot of people think that they can. Um, I was reading on the phone this morning about this family. He lives in a really beautiful. It's been on the TV actually, on the news. He lives in this beautiful house, and he got to work for I don't know how long, so many years in America. So he goes to estate agents and rents out the house, and they are there anyway. When he comes back, he opens the door. There's 3, 4 men there. They rush out and drive off, and he goes inside, and the house is 20 bedrooms, 20 rooms. The house is full of cannabis plants. It just totally. I reckon there was, I don't know, £1 million worth or something in there, and that just totally and utterly ruined his house. I mean, it just beggars belief, doesn't it? And obviously, he put an advert in. That's what he went to this estate agents. So obviously, those vented anything because it was all, and this happened. And then I think to myself, well, I can't believe that those people have done that. In the long run, we'll get away with it. Something will happen. They'll probably get caught for doing something else. And even if they don't get sent to prison for what they've done there, they'll probably end up in prison for doing something else. I don't know. You look at that, David.
Well, you've said a lot of things. Gosh, let's look at the samsara idea, the origin of things like matrices and holograms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I too think that there's a comeuppance, karma. This show's turning Hindu all of a sudden. There's something like karma, cause and effect, and in the end you'll be, that things will work out. I actually do believe things like that too. Is it possible to explain it all? Well, no, it's not. But whoever said the whole of life could be explained? It can be investigated, but that doesn't mean it can be explained. Um, at the moment, people waking up out of the samsaric condition interest me a great deal. I mean, Tucker Carlson, he's just had a spiritual experience analogous to David Icke's, I think. This guy that didn't believe in much at all, hard-nosed journalist. Why do hard-nosed journalists think they're the be-all and end-all? Suddenly realised there's something else going on, something deeper going on. And I just caught a snippet of his program. I've got to track it down and look at it later. He suddenly realised all this other stuff's going on. The world's a much bigger place, and there are intelligences around us that really think our world is little more than an ant farm compared to what they're doing. That's their attitude, and it shocked him so much. He said he'd got enough information, but he didn't want to know any more. So much for journalists. And I noticed David Icke actually responded to that, saying quite rightly. I mean, I know he's not a saint, but that doesn't mean everything he says is wrong. I mean, what he said
No, I agree
to Tucker
there.
Carlson was actually quite important. You're a journalist. You're meant to be investigating. Why have you stopped? I thought that was very, very, very important. In terms of
Yes.
Christianity, there are things called history, archaeology, theology. Some of my qualifications are in theology. You've got to have a pretty deep lack of education to think there's nothing to Christianity at all. I mean, it just shows you're an ignorant bastard. And I don't want to get into all of that because there are ways, pure hard-nosed academic ways of discussing these things. What it all means. We always get to this division. What it means is a different thing. Was there someone who can be historically identified as Joshua, Yeshua, who we now know as Jesus? I think very few people doubt that. And really, the onus is on them to show that the evidence that there is there means nothing. And was there originally a community of people surrounding that rabbi, surrounding that reformed rabbi, that teacher? Yes, and they wrote about it. What were they called? They were called the Jesus people, actually, in those early days. And there are documents, there are discussions, I mean, it's not much, but the point is, how much documentation would there be about our own great grandfather or grandmother?
Yes.
The world didn't revolve around documentation until very recently, and that's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. So, I mean, the great religions, I just don't think they can be cast into this liminal sideline. I mean, if anyone thinks the great religions are on the same level as the paranormal, then they're pig ignorant. And if they can't see what the great religions have done, which is world forming, culture forming, and civilization building, again, they really can't be taken seriously and debated with. I agree with you, Anthony. There's more in heaven and earth that's dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio, paraphrasing that greatly. But, all I'm saying is we've got to be careful how we approach it, because there are vested interests at work today that want to reframe it all as fantasy, and therefore fantasies are not really important in your life and untrue. And if we're not aware that that's going on, and those forces, dark forces, are real and trying to trick us, there's another battle won for the dark energies. What do you think, Alan?
As you were saying there, it come into my mind thinking about creation. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Thinking about creation and where we are. Um, is it by just chance, or was it meant that we expect there is a life after we've passed away? Now, that part I can accept, no problem at all. How is it then that God, in a way, can you say, allows people that passed over to come back, and some people see them or some people feel them? You could argue that once you've passed over, that's it. There's no more connection with life as it is today, but there is a connection. Do you think there's any real reason why that is. Why, if God's all powerful, why he didn't stop that from happening? I mean, it just come to me as you was talking, David.
Well, I think these things are massively complicated.
Yeah,
So I don't. I mean, I never believe that God's just some old guy that can do stuff. You're looking at
like the
something universal.
Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a bit more than that. I mean, the concept of God is the most
Yeah,
complicated notion that the human race has ever come up with. So if somebody says they're a believer or somebody says they're an unbeliever, 9 times out of 10, I don't think they know what they're talking about. Um, I mean, I remember when I was Unitarian preaching, and I miss those days very, very much indeed. I'm just beginning to realise how much I miss them. Excuse me. I remember there was one Southend on Sea. I was preaching at the Unitarian Church at Southend on Sea, and I decided to give them a blast, a reality sandwich, and we were talking about how big the universe was, and they were horrified. If we're talking about what the sciences are saying, science is a work of the human spirit too. And I said, I mean, when somebody looks up at the sky at night and they realize all that is going on, the enlightened person will be having their first religious experience. All of that is happening. Can I understand it? No, it's just too vast and big and complex and glorious. No, but that's your first religious experience, the first real one, not just sentimentality. Um, why things like that would happen in some cases and not in others, I've absolutely no idea. I suspect it's something to do with free will more than higher agencies getting involved. Not only the free will of the deceased person, but the free will of the people still incarnate here. Some choose not to have experiences like that at all. And you're not telling me, which is why I don't like programs like the one you've just mentioned, to be honest, that somehow can be overwhelmed. Sometimes, maybe, but not often. If a great injustice has been done, as you were saying again, mostly that's not caught out for years on end, and maybe sometimes never. Maybe these things are corrected somewhere else, but not here. I mean, we've got to face we live in a world of injustice, and it's behoven to us to do something about it. That's why I don't like all this matrix nonsense. There's nothing you can do, and why bother? But if that's the case, don't do anything and go and have a party. What are you
yeah,
doing? Go and enjoy yourself. But if it's not the case, it rather is. You know, it rather falls to us to do something about these things and make the world a better place. What do you think, Alan? And a more open place.
well, I do agree. I think one of the big problems it's quite crazy, really, when you've got a situation in this world now where you've got communication everywhere, Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn. You've got other media channels, etc., where communication, in a sense, on the face of it, is so easy. But the real communication of what really matters doesn't seem to happen. You know, I I can never understand why somebody, when they're going away somewhere, they post up, I'm at the airport. Oh, I'm on the plane. I've just landed. I've just had egg and chips, that type of thing. And I think, why? To me, that's not really communication. It's just silliness, really. You know. But something that really matters doesn't get talked about, or if somebody brings something really serious up, there's every chance that they'll get shot down, because if they don't know what they're talking about, or they've got no rights to say that. But you can communicate, talking about benign, ridiculous things, and you can talk about them, till the cows come home. Um, we seem to live in a very topsy-turvy world at the moment. Um, let's say the world is getting smaller and smaller, but in some ways it seems to be getting further and further away from each other in what matters. I don't know if you see it like that.
You actually said something very important there. It's where people don't want things like that discussed. That's the interesting bit and the terrifying bit. What are they afraid of? Yes, you are afraid. If you don't want certain subjects raised, yes, you're afraid of it. Why are you afraid of it? I think there's something very British in that. I don't think that's everywhere. I think it's a British problem, and it is a problem. It is a disease. I mean, let's get to my pet hate, Benidorm.
I wonder when that was going to come up.
Well, you know me, I can't resist. There are grown men over there, mature men, who are calling themselves Big Balls and Big Dog, who are going around getting drunk like they're teenagers and going there to these two roads, the strip in Benidorm, just to go to these awful bars and chicken huts. I mean, because that is all that happens there. I mean, so and I notice it tends to be that type of person that doesn't want these things discussed. I'm not against a party. I believe in my day I've partied with the best of them,
I've done it.
and
I've done it.
dragged myself under the table when it was called for. But my attitude and the attitude of the people I was with was one slightly different. There's nothing wrong with that, but is that all there is to your life? Why not be interested in art? Why not be interested in the paranormal? Why not also have those things? They're part of your life too, being human too. There's something, and I put pictures of food on Facebook because, believe it or not, I get some really good cooking advice. If I'm not, if I'm not
Well,
sure,
okay.
Turnips. We're getting lots of turnips up here. Those little sickly white buggers, and I find them difficult to cook. So I
Yeah,
put
I
a
know that.
post.
I've tried turnips. Yeah.
Oh God, they're just so sour. They're so tart. So I put a picture up the other day of one and got some really good advice from a Russian friend of mine and an Australian friend of mine about how, American friend of mine, about how they're meant to be cooked. And I thought, oh my God, that's so handy. So nobody's saying don't do things. What we are saying is don't shut things down because you want the party never to be questioned. You will get old. You will, and these questions
Yeah.
never go away. That will happen. You can't live like a teenager at 18 for your whole life. And if you do, what a nightmare. I mean, that's the picture of Dorian Gray, that wonderful story by Oscar Wilde. In other
Yeah.
words, a life lived in denial. And the reality is so horrific, he couldn't even look at what that meant when he came to it. And that's what that story's about. So nobody's saying don't enjoy yourself. We are saying life is bigger. Don't limit yourself because you'll regret it eventually if you do. What do you think, Alan?
Well, yes, I do accept that but we're here, not only to find our way and help others, but there's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself while you're doing that, long as you're not harming anybody else. Um, I'm just smiling at some of the laws around the world, but Spain, in some of the different areas, they have some um, different bylaws that it's warning the holiday makers to be aware of. There's one beach where it's against the law to build sandcastles unless you go to the town hall and get permission in writing that you're allowed to build sandcastles. There's another one where if you take a pebble off the beach, you could be fined something in the equivalent of about £1,500 in our money for taking a pebble off the beach. And then if you walk along the promenade, a man bare topped or a woman in a bikini, that can cost you something like about 3,000 uh, euros or something like that. I mean, there's some real strange laws out there, which, what they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. It's like what we consider as acceptable isn't acceptable in lots of different parts of the world. And some you can understand, and some it just doesn't make sense. Like, I might be wrong here. I don't know whether it's Portugal or it's Spain, but if you're mowing the lawn, you're not allowed to mow it between 12 noon and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and not after 7 o'clock at night. And you can't mow the lawn on a Sunday. And if you do, you get fined a lot of money. I suppose the afternoon one is probably the siesta thing, not to disturb people while they're having their siesta in the afternoon or something. I don't know, but there's lots of things that you have to be aware of. That you think you're doing things all right, and you're breaking some kind of law. I mean, the latest thing is if you go to Spain, you've for 7 days you've got to prove that you've got immediate access to at least £800 to cover that period of time for 7 days, and they bought that in because basically the locals in lots of areas of Spain are fed up with the British. So it makes you wonder, David. Are we one race? Are we all looking for the same thing in life? Are we all looking to find our place? I suppose it's about how we go about it. And my answer to that is, if you don't want to conform with, you check out a country first, find out all the laws and everything, and if you don't like it, then you just don't go there. So I don't know how you see that. I'm just referring to like Benidorm, as you was on about.
My my next play is about Benidorm, so I've got a lot to say about it.
Right, okay.
Well, no, I mean, the way the British act abroad, you're painting us all in a very kind way, but that's not the truth. The way the British act abroad is appalling.
Yes.
They're either rioting after football matches or vomiting in the streets and causing trouble. I mean, the way the British behave is legendary abroad. They're running out of money. All the things you've said make sense to me. If you get hundreds of people building sandcastles throughout the holiday period in a particular place, it won't have any sand left. If you get hundreds of people taking pebbles from a particular beach over a holiday period of months, there won't be anything left because it's like locusts descending and taking everything. What may seem silly if you're looking at a group of fair minded observers going to take tea in a foreign country, that may look ridiculous, but that's not what's happening. You get a group of louts and thugs going abroad to get absolutely pissed or cause trouble at football matches and wreak mayhem because they're on holiday. I mean, that is what is happening.
Yes.
And also, yeah, if I live in somewhere rural and it's a nice quiet Sunday, as you said, during siesta time or in the evening, no, I don't want somebody bloody mowing the lawn. And if they have to, if it gets to the stage where people just, if it gets to the stage where the only way to deal with that problem is to introduce a law, shame on all of us if that's the case, then introduce the law. until people see better.
Well,
Now, what do you think?
you're on about that. You're on about that, David, right? Sometimes I do wish there was a law like it, because we've got a neighbour a few doors away, and they're retired, and no idea what they do with their life, but they don't seem, the cars on the drive most of the time, they don't seem to go anywhere, or do a lot. And then about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night at this time of year, you suddenly hear the mower. And have big gardens. He starts mowing the lawn and then cutting the edges, and you've got some beautiful trees in there. And you think, well, it hasn't been too hot today, so why ain't he done that today? But no, he waits until about 8 o'clock at night to do it. So perhaps they ought to have that law over here. Yeah, folk
You
are
see,
strange, eh?
I'll just add one other thing, then we'll move on. There was a young lad, as you know, I look at TikTok sometimes. We look at TikTok. Excuse me. And there was a
Yeah.
young lad. I mean, he'd heard all these things were going on, so he went out to Benidorm and was filming himself. And it amused me no end. He couldn't believe how terrible it was, because he said, you've got old men, bare-chested old men, vomiting where they've had so much to drink at midday. I mean, they're not
Unbelievable.
teenagers anymore, so live with it. You're not a teenager anymore. That part of your life is gone. Right? There are other enjoyable parts of life, but that bit's gone. So they're vomiting their guts out, to quote him, at midday, and he had to try and get out of the way of old ladies on their mobility scooters, literally charging down the road and getting people out the way because they wanted to get drunk before the youth turned up in the evening. This is British holiday makers abroad. This young lad said he'd never seen anything as horrific in his life, and he could see what the excuse me, what the problems were.
Yeah. That we're talking about people who do that, right? Now, there's different ways of looking at it. Are they doing it because they're trying to escape something in their life? That they're trying to have no cares or any worries, or they've got that many worries they feel they've got to drown it that way. Then you got to ask yourself, what journey are they on? And when their time, this lifetime, comes to an end, if you believe in reincarnation, do they come back and repeat the same thing, or do they come back and learn from the experience? Now, I find that quite fascinating, because there's normally a reason why people behave like that, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, there won't be one reason. I mean, partly it's in denial. I mean, there's a British myth in the pejorative sense that we're all leading such terrible lives. We've got to go out and get drunk all the time and escape it. If we want to see what terrible lives are like, let's look at those starving to get to death in Africa, or those being crushed by underpaid employment across India and South Asia. There are real examples of terrible
Yeah.
lives on this earth. Most people in
But
this country don't have them. It's a myth, again, in the pejorative sense, that they're given and they don't question. Therefore, some of it certainly is to do with political inequality. The upper classes that care about nothing at the moment, apparently, apart from not being questioned and keeping their privilege, don't want to be challenged. They don't want certain questions asked. They don't want real democracy. So all of that's going on. Some people are just in denial anyway and need a kick up the arse. But the rest are sort of on a number of different types of journey. I've always found reincarnation the odd argument, because I can see how that works, and if there really are divine powers directly working with this earth, that strikes me as the perfect way to get
yeah,
people learning. Right,
yes,
you did sod all that time, back you go. So I can sort
Yes.
of see how that works. What
Yes.
do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah, I do. And if you lived such a evil, terrible life, then if you want to call it purgatory, whatever you want to call it, basically you're locked away for good. I don't know. It depends. It depends really how you look at it. Or is it a case that if you've done something really bad, that you're re-educated and then you come back? I mean, there's a debate, isn't there? You know, the Italy's of this world, do they get another chance, or is it you've had it, mate? That's it. Your time's up. It, it's I think that's a strange one, David.
Yeah, as I say, you're being very generous to the human condition at the moment. What was it David Bowie said? You know, he'd never done good things, he'd never done bad things, he'd never done anything out of the blue. That's most people. They've not done evil things,
Yeah,
they've not done good things,
that's right.
they've done sod
Yeah,
all in the middle. That's the vast majority, which is why I can see reincarnation working. No, you've not been this
yes,
operatic villain. You know, you've not been this operatic villain. You're kidding yourself. No, you've not been a great saint healing wherever you've gone. You're kidding yourself. You've done nothing. So that's why I can sort of see that one working. What do you think, Adam?
yeah. I suppose, yeah. It's like get get back down there and do something. Get off your backside. Yes, yeah, I can see that. What, well, if you look at the human race, really, and going back, thousands of years, I tell you what I find absolutely fascinating about mankind is that, okay, if you go back, I don't know, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, and we find evidence of, or there still is, buildings that have been built, incredible buildings, so beautiful. And there was no cranes, there was no heavy lifting gear, no lorries or whatever to transport rocks and bricks and whatever. Yeah, people have built incredible things. It might have taken overall 30, 40 years to build some of the magnificent buildings, but to be able to have the intelligence and the um, uh, to be able to create nowadays with all the technology we've got now, they put something new up, it's like a box. It's just straight up, straight down, uh, roof on, that's your lot. Whereas the beautiful buildings of this world that can date back hundreds of years or thousands of years. And I find we've, as a species, we seem to have developed incredibly well. And then in other areas, you could argue we've gone backwards. I don't know how you see that.
Yeah, again, we got to be careful of these anti-intellectual stances. I mean, I've seen a meme going around on Facebook where you see a Roman road that's still workable and a modern road full of potholes and falling apart. You know, all these people with degrees turned up. What's the problem? Well, there isn't one. I mean, actually, they had an army of slaves to do all that, unpaid and threatened with violence, and they used different materials. That's the difference. We
Well,
don't
still,
like
yeah,
slave. We don't like
yeah,
slavery nowadays. So you'd have had the equivalent of people with degrees with an army of slaves, which is why it's built well. Um, and sometimes projects in the past would have taken hundreds of years. Our ancestors believed in putting in energy and believed in the future and believed in doing beautiful things. Does that suddenly mean aliens took all the glory? They can shut off. No, it's our wonderful ancestors that did it. They did it over time, sometimes with technologies that have been lost. Why do we have to rob ourselves of doing amazing things? And nowadays it's all about cutting costs and using materials that are the cheapest possible So it depends what a society values. In the past, faith was one of the most important values, but at the moment, it's just hard money. And if that's really what's dictating our lives, people are going to get the sort of world we live in at the moment. There we are, Adam. What do you think?
Well, well, yeah, I think the thing about hard money, I think people are going to start getting it out of their pockets and going along to see women in mayhem.
Oh God, dude, that's Jimmy Young. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. Yeah, my new play, which is actually my second play, I've got lots of them. I've never been able to see what to do with them, for the simple reason: if you're a playwright, you need to collaborate with a director and a cast. You can't do it all on your own. You're a sad, desperate man or woman if you do it all on your own, and it probably won't work. So Victor Sobchak, who is the best, one of the most gifted impresarios, directors in the country, I've got a not only a friendship but a strong working relationship with him now. I mean, he adapted my two books of poetry, primarily The Grammar of Witchcraft, which played a couple of years ago, because he adapted that into a play, um, which of course played at the Camden Fringe Festival and the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. But this is so technically this is my second play. This time I'm in charge of the all guns blazing, and I've just dropped it on them all. This is it. Get on with it. So it's a step up and a bit more of a worry, because all the stage directions are in place, all the things they've got to do are in place. So, oh my God, where do we go from here? But I think we've come up with a great project, and we had previews recently that were open to the public. It went extremely well. It's funny, it's anarchic, it gets lots of questions asked, and there's a lot of fun on stage at the same time, gags and dances and all sorts of things. Women in Mayhem, excuse me, Adam, will be playing in the Camden Fringe Festival this August, between the 21st and the 25th. In toto, the entire play will be staged. We've got a brilliant cast, as I say. We've got the brilliant Victor Sobchak. At the moment, there are no plans to stage it further, because all these things are negotiation. Is anybody going to collaborate with us to take this project further? They really need to. So if you want to see something of a unique project, why not come and visit us at that time in August as part of the festival? And you will have a good time, I promise, because we've not taken a po-faced attitude. We celebrate the mystery in all of its glory. And thank you for that, Alan.
And what theatre is it at?
At Cetra Theatre, I'd have to look myself to see what times it's excuse me, what times it's playing on, because of course it's already all arranged. It's on the Camden Fringe website. It's Cetra
Yes.
Theatre, a charming pub theatre. Please come and support us. Pub theatres are not these venues that you use when you can't find anywhere else. They're one of the few last free platforms. All the theatres nowadays, most of them are owned by the big chains. You can't get new material, you can't get thoughtful material played there. They just want things like The Lion King. In other words, it's got potential big box office, and they don't want to try anything new out. This is, pubs, theatres are the great treasure of this country. If nothing else, please come and support us, because you're keeping alive one of the last free platforms for people to talk and think about things. And in a pub, right, the theatre's separate, obviously, but you can get a drink at the same time. You can have a meal and come and see what we're doing. What's wrong with you all? So there we are, Alan.
And if anybody does want to get hold of you, what's the best way they can do that, David?
I'm on LinkedIn. I've got my own website, David W. Parry, www.davidwparry.com. It needs updating, I know. I'm on Facebook. I'm on X. I'm on Twitter. I'm about if people want to find me. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, and the same for me. You can find me on social media, and I've got an updated website that was done for me by a dear friend and professional web builder, Mitesh Patel, brilliant guy, lovely man. Understandingspirit.com. So, God willing, we'll be around here next week. We hope, don't we, David?
We do indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. So until then, I hope you have a lovely Sunday and have a lovely week. And I'll say goodbye for now. And here we have the fun of me trying to log off every week. And I press the button and it looks like nothing happens. And then it just